So this is the bottom half of my CB400t engine, 1981 year. Started making weird noises, clanking, tapping sounds that I thought was the balancer chain being loose, which it's not. It might even be over tightened. So I was afraid it might be bearings or maybe even the cush drives on these balancers. So I pulled the case off, but I had a really hard time finding videos of people who've worked on these engines, especially the bottom half, and the videos I found are kind of like spotty. It's like one step in the process. So I made a bunch of mistakes, of course, and I wanted to video this for anybody who's going to do it again, just to kind of help you guys not make the same mistakes I made when you go about it. So we're kind of jumping in halfway here, but word to the wise: if you're planning on taking the lower case half off of the engine, follow the factory manual and pull this off first. The flywheel should definitely come off before you take the engine out of the bike. It's a pain to try to hold on to it while you turn it. For those who are wondering, the thread on the flywheel here is 20 millimeters with a 1.5 thread height. So I'm holding the oil filter cap screw bolt thing, which was already toast when I pulled the bike apart. And so this is the exact size that you need to pull, that you need to thread this flywheel. So if you're in a pinch or you have one laying around, this does work as a puller, as a driver. It's the exact right. It's the exact size you need to pull it off. So the oil drain plug or the oil filter bolt in the bike is the exact right size. 20 millimeter, 1.5 thread height. You just drive it in there, and it with a couple taps the flywheel comes loose. But it's easier to pull it off before you pull the bike or the engine out of the bike. And that's what the manual tells you to do anyway, so it could be that other people just follow the instructions and I don't. It saves a lot of time. In addition to the bolts that hold the case half on here, there is also a screw in the stator that goes right through here, this hole. There's three of those screws. One goes in there, one goes in the top here, one goes here. Those screws, at least this top one, screw into the lower case half. So you cannot remove the case half without at least removing this screw. The manual says to remove the entire stator off of the bike. So, like I said, if you follow the instructions, you're good to go. These screws are brutal to get out. I think that for this project, I'm going to replace them with some different type of driver, whether it's a Torx or an Allen head. They're just really hard to get out. Old bikes, it's stuck. I had to use a pair of vice grips to break the Loctite or whatever they put on them in order to get it out, because they were just really stuck in there. Even pounding on them while turning didn't do the trick. But that's kind of, at least for now, word to the wise. The manual tells you to take the top end off first, so valve cover head, cylinders, pistons, but it also tells you to remove the flywheel and stator before the engine comes out of the bike. So for obvious reasons, and I learned that the hard way. Do that first. But I'm going to go through this and check clearances and inspect for wear. I had to pull the main caps off of the crank to check those, but I'll continue to kind of video this as I go along, just for other people like me who are novices who haven't done it yet, and also to chronicle if I make another mistake, where the mistake was made, and how I can go about fixing it when I do it again. Overall, this engine looks pretty good from the bottom end before tearing it apart. There's some junk in this pickup that I'm not sure if it's metal or not. I have a magnet over here somewhere that I'll check, but the gears in the transmission don't really show any signs of wear. They all look pretty good. So even these checked spline gears, they don't really show any chipping or damage. So that's a really good sign. There's a little piece of something in there. Gasket material. But I've kind of looked through them and they look alright because they spin. These bearings don't really show any scoring. They don't make any noise really when I spin, so I should probably pull them out and look and make sure all the ball bearings are fine, but I don't suspect there's any problems there. I don't know what the chain play is supposed to be in this, but that thing is tight. It might be over tight. I'm gonna have to take a look. There are cush drives inside of here, which I'm gonna need to inspect. This is the front balancer. This is the rear balancer. So another view here. You can kind of get a look at what we're working with here. My engine stand is a wood crate. I'm doing this in my apartment. But balancer chain's here. Balancer, rear balancer is here. Transmission. Everything looks to be in pretty good order. I pulled the clutch off, but I haven't mic'd any of the discs. I checked them, there's no chipping or damage. The bike, in terms of how it shifted and functioned through the range of the gears, had no problems. But since it's apart, I might as well, I figure, do the checking now so I don't have to do it later or end up having to pull the clutch off just to check it. But this tensioner spring just doesn't feel very tight. I don't know. They say that this spring is notorious for not being very springy. You can kind of see it in there. It's just kind of loose. But that chain sure seems pretty tight. You can kind of see the rods hanging down. I'll be checking those rods for play. There's a little play side to side, but I think that's within spec. I have to look at what the clearances are. Like I said, there's not much really to say now, but there's some really dirty, nasty oil on this engine. Black. Earlier on, I pulled this engine apart and the top end was completely destroyed. I'll pull the stuff out and show it in the next video. But the valve, the rocker arms were completely destroyed, and the camshaft has worn down severely. And so this motor is going to need a new top end, new lifters, new camshaft, which I purchased the lifters. I found them used that are in good condition on eBay. But the bottom end is still a big question mark. So if I dig in here, and metal from those rocker arms in the camshaft has destroyed the journals on this crank, it might be less effort and less expensive to just buy a used engine that works and put it in the bike. So luckily now I've finally pulled the flywheel. Not an ideal puller situation, but it did the job. It's the right size. After purchasing several other pullers that were the wrong size. This one's 22 and 19. And I got another one that was 22 and 20, or 22 and, like, I think it might have been 21 or 23 and 22. Long story short, not the right size and very frustrating. So next thing is going to be to pull these main caps and do some checking on the crank. Other than that, kind of where we are now. So I think probably the final note to this video is follow the manual, because they if you follow the process they outline, you save yourself a lot of trouble, especially with this situation here. So